Anne Heche has joined us back in studio. Always great to see you, Anne.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here. I love your studio.
Well, thank you. The studio loves you as well. Anne is Emmy Award-winning, Tonys, Broadway. Wait, nominated for Tonys?
The Tonys, yep, nominated for the Tony.
New movie, 13 minutes in select theaters. That'll be Friday, this coming up Friday, available on all digital platforms, November 19th. Trace Atkins in this. Amy Smart. We were just asking about Amy Smart the other day. Peter Facinelli has been in here. Thor Birch. The podcast, by the way, Anne has, called Better Together with Anne and Heather. What is the theme of the podcast?
Well, I mean, it really, I say self-knowledge is one thing and adding others is everything. So we like to tell stories and get people to be able to share who they are and tell the truth and hopefully make our lives a little better and create experts around us to live in loving kindness. So we have an expert that comes on, Jason Target comes on, and he helps us with finances, getting over the shame of things that we are shamed about, whether it's our money or we have Dr. Eon, who's a happiness expert, and she comes on once a month. And we kind of activate the idea of what it means to be happy, what it means to be in control of your life, and share with others the things that help us feel better and look better and sound better.
We were just touching on shame a little bit as it pertained to food in my childhood.
Oh, what's that topic? I want to hear that.
Well, I don't think about it that much, but I had a lot of shame growing up.
Yes.
I was very ashamed of my family. My family was kind of a mess, and I felt a lot of shame. And it's like I could remember I very much just wanted to be like the other kids. You know, of course, you idealize their family. Look at it. They go on ski vacations. Look at them, you know. And it's like my sister ran away when I was like 13 or 14. And people would be like, where's your sister? And I'd be like, oh, she's in the Alps.
Wow.
You know, studying abroad. Yeah.
Oh,
Like, I felt really shamed. Like, wow, this is so weird. Like, of course my family's a fucking shit show.
Yeah.
My sister ran away.
Wow.
And we went to the same school. So it's like.
So they really noticed.
It would come up.
There was an absentee ballot.
Yeah, but I just remember having a lot, like my mom was a mess, you know, kind of physically a mess. Like I didn't want people to see our house or anything.
Well, I know the feeling.
You got it a lot worse than I did.
Well, it's not that. I mean, I think that's when you ask what Better Together is about, it's really that. It's being able to tell your story truthfully so that other people can get rid of their shame. I mean, I had a really horrendous background. And I wrote a book about it, Call Me Crazy, so that, I mean, what I thought was, if I can tell this story about how horrible things are, then people aren't going to be so afraid to tell the truth about their stories, because I really do believe that telling your story is the way that you get on the other side. I was raised in a very abusive background, and there are people who are really hurting a lot because their fear to share what it is that happened to them. So I'm really appreciative that you just shared that with me. It's a horrible thing to feel so isolated when you're a child, and then we get stuck being the adult who hasn't dealt with it. So part of what I talk about on the show is to tell your last name story, the thing you were born into that wasn't your choice, so that you can claim yourself. And that's what I call the first name story. My second book will be called Call Me Anne.
Well, here's, but then we have to sort of make a division here between, or maybe we don't. I'm curious what everyone thinks about this.
Between?
Well, there are things, you grew up in a very horrific environment.
Yes.
And I grew up in a less horrific environment.
Neglectful.
A little more neglectful. But now there's people, there's no doubt that when my kids who are 15 now are in their late 20s, they're going to be sitting in a therapist's office explaining what a tragedy their life was.
Oh,
because only one of their parents owned a Tesla. Right?
Right. I know.
They were going to construct something about something about something.
It's going to be this. They will make up something for sure. Mine was that I was it really so loving that I would throw all the parties during high school. Like sometimes a kid wants a mom to be there every single night for dinner. There's always going to be something that they can pull out of their hat to cream us.
So then how do we separate? But we're seeing it, micro and macro. We're seeing our society aggrieved. Everyone's got a beef now. There was a microaggression against me, or I felt unsafe, or, everyone is sort of turning themselves into victims who probably shouldn't be victims. So then where's the balance between admitting something and agreeing on something versus manufacturing something and then getting into that sort of victim tent when maybe you don't belong in the victim tent and maybe it's not helping you to be in that victim tent.
I like you talking about a victim tent. I call it the demand castle. When you go in, you blame somebody else for what you don't have or want. So whether or not it's like I'm going out on my first date, I'm getting ready, blah, blah, blah. We walk into that first date and go like, you don't like my ass? Are you looking at my tits? What are you looking at? You don't like this? We shame somebody into not liking us before we even enter a room. We're like, I don't want you to date me. Okay, bye. All I did was like, look at your ass. But making up things, the difference between that and telling the truth is that one is a lie and one is the truth. So encouraging people to tell the truth about what's going on. Listen, the hardest word in my life was victim because my mother was a victim to me. And she probably had a good excuse to be. I mean, there was a lot of death in my family, a lot of abuse. We were homeless. It sucked. So she had a right to cry. She lost her husband. She lost her son. But that to me, and we lived in a one-bedroom apartment in Chicago together, so all I heard was crying all night long, hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. I couldn't get it. So the last thing I wanted to do was cry or complain. The problem is then you don't have an outlet to be able to tell the truth about what's going on for you. I didn't have a chance to more. I didn't do whatever. Either way, I feel like you got to get on the truthful side of what your life is to be able to embrace where it is you want to go. And to me, the victim train could be really helped by people understanding their purpose. We don't talk to our children about what they want to do with their life. What patterns would they like to create? What is it that they want their intent to be? How do we want to treat ourselves and each other? But we don't really ask those questions. I think people fall into a habit of complaining or blaming is probably something that you can jump on board with, make it somebody else's problem. But I really do encourage people to tell the truth about their own and heal themselves through telling the truth.
Yeah. Well, it says here that your father died of AIDS when you were 13.
He was one of the first men to die of AIDS in America.
Really?
The night before, he died, and the next day was Sunday, and the Sunday New York Times labeled AIDS the gay disease the day after he died.
Wow.
And we were told, talk about victim. I guess we were kind of victimized by AIDS. We were told that we wouldn't know if we were going to live for 9 years. So that was how they.
Was your father bisexual?
He was. He lived a double life. He was a criminal, really.
He had two lives.
Yeah.
My dad had half a life.
He had half a life. See,
right.
Your problems are as bad as my problems, kid.
You didn't do one. Your dad had a double life.
Yes, yes, he did. Yep.
When did you find out about that?
Probably when we became homeless. I got home from school one day and our house was boarded up with the yellow caution tape, and that was the end of us being in the dark about the fact that we were hiding from the government and the law and our landlords. And we had to sleep in a car until my brother's friends took us in. And God bless them. A school teacher and a secretary took us into their house. And we lived in a bedroom with them for a year of our life.
What was your dad's double life?
He was, do you mean sexually? He was a sexual, I would say he was a sex addict.
He was like going out at night, hustling or whatever?
Hardly ever at home. Ever.
Wow.
He would come home once in a while. The only job that he ever held was playing the piano for church. And that's how I got my first job, because I would sing in church every Sunday, and sometimes he would show up and sometimes he wouldn't. And either way, I would sing with the choir. And a family that went to church listened to my voice and said, you know what, we know that you're homeless. Why don't you come and audition for Amaryllis and a Music Man? And I began supporting my family for $100 a week. They gave me cash and we started saving up, and eventually after a year we got an apartment.
Was your dad I know he played the piano, but was he a musician? Was that his? Or, it sounds like there's some substance.
Choir director is what his title was, and what he claimed was that he was in a business called Gas and Oil. Now, how a choir director from Ohio knows anything about gas and oil is as much a mystery to you as it was to us. But having no other idea what was going on in our lives, we were like, okay, gas and oil. So we moved from Ohio to Atlantic City, New Jersey, which is not a place where most people are raised, and then went down apartment after apartment down the coast until he finally discovered that he was dying and that he didn't have any money, and we were in debt and homeless. So that was a lot to come out of. Oh, you want to hear me complain some more?
This isn't complaining.
This is my story. This is what this is the truth of my story. It's the last name story. The things we don't have a choice about.
AIDS?
I'm quite certain he did.
He did.
But again, when you think about AIDS or COVID, AIDS was the last pandemic. In fact, COVID and HIV are very similar if you look at the actual coding of it, CODE of it. And that was we were the lepers of the time and had to move. We had to leave Ocean City, New Jersey, because we were rejected from the church and told that we could never have any personal contact because at the time nobody knew anything about AIDS.
So it's like 81, 82?
Yeah, 83.
83. And was there a substance? It sounds like your dad had a substance issue.
I think he had a lot of issues, Adam. So I would tell you that he did. Now, again, I was raised in a cult situation when I was in Ohio, and we kind of lived in that kind of darkness for quite a while until he died. The Bible being the only book we could read. We were moved from place to place because of the abuse, and abuse has a system. You have to keep the children blocked from any other human interaction unless they are, of course, a part of your religious cult where you are sexually abusing children.
So there were no mandated reporters around you. Other adults looking out for your best
other
interest.
adults, and nor do they want you to share your story with others. And because you're so shamed, to use that word because it's an appropriate one, I call it what I walked around with, shame weight. And I see it on others when you don't have the ability to talk about what do we do? We have some of us who choose substances, some of us choose food, some of us choose, I don't know, skydiving. I don't know how people get over their things, but we, like to encourage the truth being told so that they can get to the other side.
How'd you get from this crazy chaos to Hollywood?
It's pretty amazing, isn't it? Well, we had to move from Atlantic City. We moved to Chicago because my older sister was there, and I had to go to school. My father died on March 4th, 1983, and my brother died on June 4th and killed himself. So we were living with a lot of death, and my mother was very unstable, and we moved into this one-bedroom apartment, and I needed to go to school, so I saw a school down the street, walked down the alley. I was like, I got to go to school. Well, the woman comes in, it's an empty school. School's going to open in a week, and she's like, what are you looking for? And I'm like, I got to sign up for school. And she's like, well, this school, do you know what this school is? No, what the heck is this school? This is a private school. I said, what's a private school? She said, well, you have to pay money for this school. I don't got any of that. I didn't even know there was such a thing called a private school. She brought me into her office and listened to my story, and they gave me a full scholarship. That led to me being discovered in a high school play because Daryl Hannah had gone to my school, and a woman who was doing a soap opera casting got snowed in Chicago and decided to call the school and see if there was a play on. And I was in Thornton Wilder's Skin of Our Teeth that night. And afterwards, she came backstage and said, I'd like to ask you if you want to come audition for a soap opera. And I said, sure. What's a soap opera? I didn't have a TV. I didn't know what the heck anybody was talking about. But they flew me to New York. They offered me the job. I did not want to take my mother, who was very sick emotionally and in other ways. And 2 years later, the producer came back and said, I know what your struggle has been, and I want to offer you another opportunity to come and be on a soap opera if you want to come to New York and audition. And a day after I graduated high school, I started playing twins on Another World. Thank you, John Whitesell.
Did you get paid twice?
He said, I did when she came on. I mean, it was like $600 a week. Somebody was asking me the other day when I was on Jason Tartick's podcast, and he said, we want to know Trading Secrets is the name of his show, and he's we want to know some for real deal. Like, how much do you make? Like, what do you make when you're on a soap? And I think I made $600 a week, and I did it for 4 years, and that's what kind of catapulted me into being an actress.
So you were initially asked to go, but you didn't go the first time around.
I couldn't live with the trauma of my mother, and it could not have been a healthy situation.
But then the second time, right out of high school.
Second time I was out of there. John Whitesell is his name, and he was moving from As the World Turns to Another World. There are less soap operas these days. Mm-hmm. But truly the beauty and the blessing of my life, the fact that I even am a survivor of the abuse that I went through. I have 3 siblings who are dead. And the fact that I'm a survivor of it only can be given to the people who saved my life. And John Whitesell was one of them, the woman who gave me an opportunity to go to school when I didn't even understand that there was a private school. So I've come a little bit of a way.
Well, and I just was thinking you've had these blessings, I would imagine, by these people.
Yes.
And I think the scariest thing for, I would imagine, a kid in your circumstances is predators looking for kids in your circumstances.
My whole life was lived in fear for a very long time. Fear of death and fear. I just didn't trust anybody. And that's partly why my Hollywood history is a little bit, has been, I say, don't get 2 cups of insanity in and get to take one out. Like mine came out as big as it went in. And the reason that I stand up for what I stand up for so specifically is because I don't, have a choice, because my God, my life was lived in a lie until I saw the deaths of my brother and my father. And I said, I'm going to start living in truth. And there was absolutely nothing that gave me any guidance or support or understanding. And I didn't have anybody that I could talk to. So the way that I did it was probably a little bit brazen. But I feel very grateful that I'm able to be a person who has moved the needle for equal rights and the right for people to love who they want to love. Because that to me was how I got my life saved.
Once you moved to New York, were you basically been gainfully employed ever since? You've probably taken
it's kind
a
of
little
amazing, other than my blacklisting for taking Ellen DeGeneres to the Volcano premiere years ago, and I didn't do a studio picture for 10 years. People don't know that part of my story or what happened to me because of that experience. But I feel very blessed that I've been able to be working for.
I remember Volcano.
You remember Volcano?
I like that movie.
Thank you. I did too, except I couldn't see the end of it because they ushered Ellen and me out of the premiere before it ended, put us in a car and said, well, we don't want you back here. We will not be accepting pictures of you and Ellen. And then I was fired. I was told before I went to the premiere with Ellen that I would be fired. And I was...
Are we talking about 90...
now you're going to put years on... yes.
92?
Early, there was 2 volcanoes. Dante's Peak,
yeah, but they came out the same week.
Right.
Ours won, by the way, and then they blamed me for its failure for taking a woman. I was like, but we were number 1 in the box office. The confusion of how I was fired and the fact that nobody has ever acknowledged it is just shows, in a way, it shows how much further we've come. Because if that would have happened today, obviously it wouldn't happen today, and I feel glad that I'm a part of that. But yes, I met Ellen. Just to give you a bit of a timeline, because it's kind of interesting. I think people don't understand how quickly this all happened for me. On Sunday night, I met Ellen at the Volcano. On Sunday, I met her at the Vanity Fair party for the Oscars. On Tuesday night, she was coming out on her show. I didn't even know who she was. This is part of the naivete that led my life to such destruction or celebration, however you choose to look at it. I see it as a celebration. But I was amazed. I saw truth. My father had lived a double life. I felt like my family had been destroyed because of his lack of being able to, be honest about his sexuality.
Hold on. I just want to put a year to this. What year was
97.
97.
Oh, God. I was way off.
Ooh, I was right on.
You were.
Yeah. All right. So, but Ellen is just coming out.
That was Tuesday night. Wednesday was my Volcano press junket. Thursday night was Volcano. So they knew I wanted to take Ellen. I had never met her before. I didn't know who she was. I was like, whoa, you have your own TV show? That's cool. Like, what's it called? And she's like, Ellen. It's called Ellen. Do you know who you are? And I'm like, probably not. She said, you're the it girl. I said, I've never been it. I have never been it. And she's like, you cannot be this close to me. Like, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know. You're the most interesting person in the room. Meanwhile, everybody's walking around with statues and but she was glowing. Something was so powerful. She was the one person I asked to meet. And when she told me what she was doing, coming out on her show, I was like, you're the most spectacular person in the world. I fell in love with the truth of what that incredible human being was doing. Then I had to be in a relationship with her, so that was a little difficult. So I asked her to go.
Premiere.
And then on Wednesday, which was the Volcano, I asked her to come and meet me for lunch at the Four Seasons, and I was greeted by 5 suits. Ellen was sitting in a chair, and I said, as far as I remember, I didn't invite anybody else to lunch today. And they said, we know that you want to take Ellen to the premiere, and we're here to tell you that you will be fired from your $10 million picture deal if you do it. And then Ellen looked at me. I was sitting on the armchair because she lit a Four Seasons chair, and she said, "Do what they say. you don't know what you're up against. We've only known each other for a couple of days. And I said, I do know what I'm up against. I'm up against sitting in a room after you've just come out on national television to preserve the right of anybody to be able to love who they want to love. And now you're sitting in the soup of the demise of a culture that does not pay attention to that truth. I will take you to the premiere, and whatever those consequences are, my dear, I will face. And that's something that was very confusing to people, because the carrot that was being dangled for me was the carrot of Harrison Ford, who I met on that Tuesday morning. So this is a 4-day period of time. I was told that I would be fired from Volcano, and the next thing they said before I fired them was that I was not going to be able to do 6 days, 7 nights with Harrison.
Right. You
So
two
I
on
got
an island,
I got thrown
right?
off. That was
plane
the
crash island. You and Harrison Ford.
Harrison Ford.
Right.
But some people like this movie. You might want to see it.
I have not seen it. I do know it. I remember it was a big movie. I mean,
it was my last studio picture, because Harrison Ford, who I call and consider my hero in life, rang. The phone rang. Now, this was now Friday morning. We just been, our entire lives have been turned upside down. I didn't even know. I didn't even have a television. I couldn't believe that all of a sudden I had.
Tell me you knew who Harrison Ford was.
So what?
You knew who Harrison Ford was.
Well, here's the story that I had to tell Harrison, because, of course, when I talk about an abusive childhood, I wasn't allowed to watch TV or see movies. So the very first movie I was ever allowed to see was Star Wars. And we made popcorn at home and made pizza burgers, which were things made out of the leftover pizza shavings that my brother could bring home for us to eat from the pizza parlor that he was working in on the boardwalk. And we shoved our popcorn into our jackets and sat in the front row and watched Harrison Ford. So when I met him on that Tuesday morning, I was like, I don't know what the heck is ever going to happen. You clearly are never going to hire me. But I just got to say, you changed my life. Like, you're the first person I ever saw in a movie. And that was like the first thing that ridiculously blurted out of my mouth before he said, sweetheart, you never tell that story again. It tells you how old I am. I'm like, oh, okay, well, anyway. And he said, do you want to read a scene? And I was like, sure, which one? Ivan Reitman looked, he's like, which one? Don't you have sides?
Reitman directed that?
Uh-huh. See, now you're more interested. Now you know it's a comedy, don't you?
He can be a handful.
Oh, you think I'm a little funny, do you?
No, I worked a little bit with Reitman.
It was its own story, because he didn't want to hire me. So Harrison he said, Ivan said, did you get sides for the thing? I'm like, oh, no, I know the script. Which scene do you want to do? And he said, you memorize the script? I'm like, that's my job, isn't it? But I came off a soap opera. I played twins. I did 60 pages of dialogue a day. That was nothing.
You were Amaryllis, for God's sake.
I was Amaryllis. But Harrison looks at it, Ivan, and goes, well, she's more interesting than most. That then led to him understanding that I was going to be fired. And when the phone rang on that Friday morning, I picked up the phone. I don't know how many tears we had cried. We knew that our lives were devastated and didn't understand why, and all of the other confusion that goes along with hatred. But Harrison said, hey, is Anne there? And I go, oh, God, like, which shoe is going to drop? Like, what is going to befall on my head right now? And he said, it's Harrison. I said, Harrison who? He goes, do you know another one? And I said, no. He said, well, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn who you're sleeping with. Let's go make the best romantic comedy we can. And he was the reason that I still have a voice, because honestly, after that, I didn't work in a studio movie for 10 years until I did... until I was rescued and did Cedar Rapids with Ed.
Yes, friend.
Helms. So
my favorite Anne Heche movie is not listed here shamefully.
Is it 6 Days, 7 Nights?
It's Wag the Dog.
Oh,
I love
thanks,
Wag
man.
the Dog. You were fantastic on Wag the Dog.
Thank you.
So is that not considered a studio picture?
That was studio. I shot that.
Okay.
Though. Yeah.
Talk about that experience.
Although I don't know at the time,
movie.
actually. Well, that's a Barry Levinson film. That's another fun story. Well, that movie is quite phenomenal, because I was asked to do a reading after I had done Donnie Brasco. I mean, I had some real hits. That's why it was so funny to me that I got booted. I'm like, hello, talent. And again, the conversation has continued and gotten so much better now about being able to talk about actors who are, whatever sexuality they want to be. But that one came to me as a reading, and that's what they used to do. People used to really give a lot of time and thought and energy to movies. Well, there was a movie that they wanted to do with a man who was the third lead, and Barry called me and asked me if I would come and read with Bob De Niro and Dustin Hoffman.
Oh, for your part, the mail.
Yeah, they were going to do a table read. And I was like, yeah. So I show up, of course, nervous as hell. And I'm like, what do I read? All the girl parts, the thing, like, I'll play waitress 1, 2. How do you want me to do it? He said, no, I want you to read Win. I said, Win? Win's the lead. He said, yeah. I said, it's a man. He's like, yeah, just read it word for word. Just do it, and let's see what happens. So I did a cold reading with Bob De Niro and Dustin Hoffman, and at the end of it, he pushed back Sphere, and they did that movie. And it was one of the fastest movies at that time to be shot, because we shot it in 29 days. Nobody did that.
Wasn't it shot during a break on Sleepers? Or there was something where they squeezed it into where they should not
it was
have been.
Sphere. Sphere was the movie that he was getting ready to do, and so they pushed it back. And Bob Richardson, the director of photography, was doing something that nobody else had ever done. This all takes place at the White House, et cetera, et cetera. But this is how old I am. We didn't have little cameras that you could put 19 places. They had big cameras. He did something that nobody else had done so that they could shoot 19 cameras at the same time as we would walk through the hallways and everything else. It was unheard of then. Now we have GoPros. You can do whatever the heck you want. But then in the old days, in the ancient days where I was born, we had to. It was a phenomenal movie to do, and obviously, you know, what can you say? I said I was like the drums to Bob and Dustin. They work very different ways, and then whenever one of them would stop doing what they needed to do, I would come in with a cymbal and say something and cue the other person that it was time for them to talk.
Well, Brian, thanks for bringing that up, and yes, it should have been on the list.
And Woody Harrelson too. I mean, that's a
Woody! I learned how to do some yoga with that guy. And maybe a little more than yoga. We had some fun.
You had some fun with Woody.
I mean, there's a lot of different ways to interpret that. But yes.
I'm going the sexual way.
Let's just go sexual first.
I heard yoga and fun. I don't usually hear those words put together. All right, let me hit MD Hearing Aid, and then we'll get into some news with Anne as well. Having trouble hearing my nuggets of wisdom? Try MD Hearing Aid. FDA-registered rechargeable hearing aid. Average price of a hearing aid is over $2,400, but their Volts Plus model is just $299.99 each. When you buy a pair, rechargeable with up to 30 hours of battery life, water resistant, and up to 3 foot of water. No prescription or doctor's appointment necessary. Buy direct. They have licensed hearing specialists available 7 days a week. 600,000 plus satisfied customers, I should say. Edward Wayne in New Jersey says MD Hearing Aid is the best he's used at any price. 45-day risk-free trial, 100% money back guaranteed. Am I right, Dawson?
It's time to reclaim your life from hearing loss. Go to mdhearingaid.com and use promo code Adam to get their buy one, get one for $299.99 each offer. Plus, they're adding a free extra charging case, $100 value just for listeners of the Adam Carolla Show. So head to mdhearingaid.com and use our promo code Adam, or you can call them at 855-936-5603. That's 855-936-5603.
I call it demand castle. When you go in, you blame somebody else for what you don't have or want. So whether or not it's like I'm going out on my first date, I'm getting ready, blah, blah, blah. We walk into that first date and go like, you don't like my ass? Are you looking at my ass? You looking at my tits? What are you looking at? You don't like this? We shame somebody into not liking us before we even enter a room. We're like, I don't want you to date me. Okay, bye. All I did was like, look at your ass.